Good evening and welcome to this special meeting this afternoon. If you will join me for a moment of silent prayer, and then we'll do the pledge of allegiance. Amen.
Lead the flag of the United States of America.
One nation, under God,
Under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Discussion items, the 2022 Kennesaw County Payroll System and Payroll Classification Study. No.
Commissioners, I have prepared just a short slideshow presentation for you. But before we get into that, I just want to go over briefly how payroll was completed before. I put on your desk a copy of the timesheet and a copy of a cover page. So before we went to the new system, employees filled out this timesheet, and there were several variations of the timesheet. EMS had one that was different from this. I think the health department had one that was different from this one. And some employees were handwriting in timesheets. This was the one that was most prevalently used, the one that you have in front of you today. So throughout the course of a month, the employees would, on a daily basis, some employees on a daily basis, some employees on a weekly basis, and then some right before timesheets were due, they would go in and fill out their timesheet for the month, or for the day, or for the week. That information would be sent to their supervisor or their department head. Then their department head would transfer that information into an abbreviated version that is contained in the cover sheet you have. The cover sheet is this. So after the information was transferred from the timesheet to the cover letter, it was then sent to the finance department. The finance department, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the finance department would at that point manually enter all that information into our payroll system. And that, in a nutshell, is how our employees are paid. Are there any questions about that? Okay, so I want to go through this brief slideshow about the payroll system. Aisha? Oh, that's me. So,
Can you move this podium so I can see?
yes. Can you move it back when the department heads are ready? Can you see that now? So in a department head meeting prior to July, department heads were asked about bi-weekly payment. 100% of the department heads were in agreement. On July 7th, department heads were notified that monthly amounts would be less than before, but would be made up in additional checks received in July and December. In July and August, the implementation team met with all departments about workflows and additional requirements for their department, for their individual departments. They met with some of these departments multiple times. All departments were given the option of which way they would like to clock in and out, whether it be by a mobile device kiosks, keying in from their computers, or through a time clock. In November, the conversion team sent emails out to all department heads with instruction and a letter to employees explaining the new system and an example of the conversion of how it would affect their paychecks. They also advised them to meet with financial institutions to make arrangements concerning outstanding loan obligations. It also explained the December payroll. In November, the implementation team spoke to the banks where employees had them. On December 3rd, multiple training sessions were held for both staff and approvers. In December, Barry Lynch with EMS brought up some of his employees were not happy. I do believe at that time, and we'll hear from Mr. Lynch today, but I do believe at that time it was more concerning the overtime issue that we've spoken about before, rather than the payroll system as a whole, because EMS was the most seamless conversion that we made. They were already, except for 2 employees in EMS, they were already being paid hourly and being paid, Same way we're looking at paying them, they were hourly employees from the start. We had constant contact with departments throughout the entire process, multiple meetings, and the implementation teams answered emails and phone calls leading up to and throughout the entire process. So next, I just wanted to show a couple of graphic illustrations about, first, the Fair Labor Standards Act. Fair Labor Standards Act requires us as employers to pay our employees for the time they work. The way our old system worked, you can see for 2022, there would be 6 months employees were overpaid. The Fair Labor Standards Act does not care a bit if we overpay our employees. They're fine with that. But these months in which we underpay our employees, they're not okay with that. We have to make sure we're paying our employees for their time. Are there any questions about that? Okay. So I wanted to do a real quick pros and cons list before we talk to the department heads. The pros of the old system, it paid employees the same amount each month. It was a basic system, no real options available with it. It was easy. Basic. But it did not directly comply with the Fair Labor Standards Act. We used paper timesheets, which were not accurate. If an employee waits till the end of the month to fill out their timesheets, which we know many employees did, then when we get back around to the first of the month and they start filling out their timesheets, it wasn't always clear which employees would remember if they came in 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late or left a few minutes early. Approved balances were always a month behind. Data wasn't easily exportable from the ACS system to any other format. It was not user-friendly. 100% manual entry by employee and by payroll staff. We had to manually manipulate the system when doing calculations within the system. We paid employees for time they had not yet worked. So we were paid on the 4th Friday of every month. But many times there would be 4 or 5 days left in the month. But the employee was paid for that entire month before they had ever worked the time, which you can imagine caused some problems for time. Accruals had to be manipulated the following month. And a lot of our employees didn't really understand how they were paid. And truthfully, that's one of the major requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act, that employees understand how they get paid. So for the new system, it adds employee accountability. It calculates all reporting data to the IRS that's required by the IRS and the state. Correct me if I'm wrong. It pays employees for the actual time that they work, no more, no less. Pays them for the time they work. Supervisors can see which employees are clocked in and which employees are not. We're paid by the minute. We have real-time data on our employees. Additional department head and supervisor tools to better manage time and attendance. It will flow through directly into Munis, our finance software. Employees receive wages for time worked earlier than in the old system. It can be tailored to fit different departments. There are various ways to punch in, as we've talked about before: mobile, time clock, computer, kiosk. And when an employee punches in using their cell phone, the mobile option, it captures their geolocation. So the geodata is collected. We know exactly where they punch in. We know if they punched in from home. We know if they punched in from their first assignment for the day. So we know that. So there's, here again, it adds back to accountability. The cons for the new system, it's a new system. We have to learn. All employees have to learn. And that's going to take some doing. It's not, we're not going to learn the new system overnight. But we are doing training sessions. We have done training sessions. And we will continue to do those training sessions throughout. We are completing the process twice a month, but as employees get more used to what we're doing, and as supervisors and approvers get more used to what we're doing, it won't be as arduous as it is currently. We're still working out the bugs in the system, and that's to be expected for any new system. Anytime anyone implements a new system, there's going to be a learning and, we didn't think about this, or we didn't get this exactly right. And employees do receive somewhat less money in most calendar months, but that's made up in the 2 extra paychecks that you saw on the previous slide that would be received in July and December. So next we have just a calculation to where you see the old monthly wages in red, and you see the bi-weekly wages in blue. You can see the old monthly wages total up to $41,604. The wages owed, the wages paid, total up to $41,600. So the yearly amount is the same for all employees. Now, the reason you see $41,604 in the old monthly wages is that we had to go through two rounding processes. There were 2 rounding processes in the payroll system before. And a lot of times that they wanted to make whole dollars. They didn't want to pay anybody in cents. So to make everything whole dollars, there was a rounding process. And for an employee that made, I think this is based on $20 an hour, for an employee who made $20 an hour, that rounding process in the old payroll system rounded them up from $41,600 to $41,604. That's it. That's it for my slideshow. Do you have any questions about how we pay, why we switched, or the monthly amounts for either system? So commissioners, it's my understanding, yes, sir.
I just want to be abundantly clear. The new system pays every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, 26 times a year.
And when you say the extra check in July and December, it's not an extra check, it's just that those months are staggered such that they'll get 3
That's
bi-weekly checks in July, and they'll get 3 bi-weekly checks in December.
That's correct.
It's a matter of math.
That's correct. So, commissioners, it's my understanding that you wanted to have a special meeting today to hear from department heads on what they thought of the new system and how the new system was working for them. So we scheduled department heads in at 6 at a time. The department heads will come up to speak to you 1 at a time. And we're going to limit this to about a 3 to 4 minute discussion. Of course, if the board has questions for that specific department, by all means, feel free to ask questions. But at this point in time, we'll start calling up department heads in their groupings that they were assigned.
Ask a question. Exactly when did these overpayments and underpayments start? When did it begin?
Well, they began the month that the finance department started using the old system. When we went to a monthly payroll system and employees were paying the same amount, can you go back to that graphic actually?
You can just tell me the year. I didn't really mean exactly.
I think we've been on the old system. Does anybody have an idea? How long have we been on the old system? Since 2000. Are there any other questions before we bring the department heads up? There are a few department heads that could not be here today. Janine Everett, Samantha Shoemaker, and maybe a handful of others. They said to, just to tell the board they were sorry that they couldn't be here. They had prior obligations, medical appointments, family emergencies, so on and so forth. So if there's no other questions, Carly, you want
In the first group, we have economic development, and then if maintenance and the library and family services will follow.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Corey Lindsay, Economic Development Director. I have very brief comments about this. My department is very small. While we experienced some difficulties with the new payroll system, technical difficulties really, I believe that with a bit more training and time, we'll be able to work through those. Our department has made the transition to the new payroll timing just fine as well. But I can't understand how this may have placed a greater burden on employees whose wages and family circumstances were already strained.
Could you repeat what you just said, the last thing?
I said I could understand how changing to the payroll timing may have placed a greater burden on employees whose wages and family circumstances were already strained.
Thank you.
So how?
Because people were counting on so much money per month, and now they're not getting that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Aisha, the Director of Family Services. We are a staff of 5, and I'm not going to say the transition has been seamless. There has been some adjustments because we are an on-call department where we carry a 24/7 crisis line to respond to victims of domestic violence at all times. The challenges for the staff and pretty much just have been the adjustment to the decrease in pay over a month's time. I reminded them of the memo that was sent in November. I've spoken with them about the extra pay that will come in July and December. They seem to understand that and they seem agreeable with that, but I think that if we can advocate for some other type of recourse, I'm not sure if there's a salary study that's coming out soon or anything like that, but that could alleviate some of the challenges that staff are facing. Thank you.
Question? You got a question?
Yeah, I believe.
Okay. I want to get some clarification on something. I've worked with payrolls over my entire professional career. And when you go to a biweekly payroll, it's not July and December when you catch up. If you look at it, I think it's every quarter, there will be an extra week or something in there. But it's more than twice a month, twice a year.
Commissioner Hall, you're exactly correct. There are 4 times within a month on a quarterly basis that you experience 5 Fridays in every month. That's correct. However, in this biweekly payroll system, the way the payroll falls, you only experience a third check twice throughout the year. And Ashley, can you bring up the slideshow again?
Again, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I don't need that. I think you clarified one part.
Okay.
So I think the issue with me is that perhaps not looking at the 4th Friday, but looking at, say, the end of the month or sometime to pay based on actual hours. That could make a difference.
So if we pay based on actual hours worked at the end of a month, employees, correct me if I'm wrong, but employees would have to go an entire month at the beginning of the process without receiving a check. So they would have to, when we started that process, employees would have to go for 2 months before they receive their first check. The way the bi-weekly payroll system works is you operate with, I'm sure in your working careers, you've heard people reference to a week in the hole. We've got a week in the hole. So that's the way the bi-weekly pay system works now. We've got a week in the hole. If we pay them for time worked on a monthly basis, we would have to revert to a month in the hole rather than a week in the hole. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
Good evening. First, I want to say thank you for listening to us and hearing our concerns and employees' concerns. Obviously, it does get a little confusing, so I think there was we didn't all do our due diligence and understanding and researching how this would affect us when it came to pay. I'm not here on my behalf, but I'm here on behalf of my employees. So I have one employee who, since this transition, and there's been some technical issues that we can work through, but since this transition with the reduction in monthly pay, she has now had to apply for food stamps. And I have 2 employees who are now getting assistance with the electric bill. So we can work through this, but I am advocating for the salary study, which I shouldn't have employees on food stamps. So if we can look at the salary study to try to alleviate some of these concerns that the employees have, we would greatly appreciate that. As far as the technical issues go, any new technology is going to be a bit of a challenge to learn, and we're adjusting, so I think we're getting through that.
Good evening. I'm BJ Powell, interim maintenance director. My department's 6, 7 people. A lot of my guys and gals have come from production type environments. They're used to clocking in and out on a daily basis and bi-weekly pay. So the transition for them has been pretty much seamless. The one thing I have heard is the money short. And the extra checks or the calculated checks later on in the year is not helping them right now. So, any questions?
Thank you.
So, just as a note, when you're up speaking, you really need to be about that close to the microphone when you speak, or nobody can hear you. So make sure you're pretty close to the microphone. We got this.
Next.
Thank you for giving all of us the opportunity to address you. Can you hear me now? Can't you?
Pull your mask down. Thank you.
I think there have been a number of concerns regarding the adjustment to the new pay plan for the county. I have a large number of employees, and while they participated in some of the training, what happened is the bottom line is they're coming up short on their take-home pay. Most of these people, including myself, we have monthly expenses that have to be paid, whether it be mortgages, childcare, car payments. Everybody has scheduled their expenses based on their available income. So now people are short of income. Some have to pay childcare. Some drive to our agency to work from Reedsville, Eden, Person County. The gas is unbelievable, the price of gas at the moment. I've had people say, I love working here, but with the pay adjustment, I don't think I can stay here. I think I'm gonna have to look for something else closer to home because I can't afford the added expense of driving back and forth here. Plus, the cost of groceries. If you've been to the grocery store, you know what that looks like. So not only are employees having to adjust to having less take-home pay, they're having to try to absorb all the extra expenses that we unfortunately are experiencing at the moment. So I have a lot of employees who are very, very concerned. Most had mortgages, rent, that was set up on their previous pay level. And it's not easy to go to the bank and say, I'm sorry, now I've got less money. Could I pay you less every month? That's a long process to try to renegotiate loans and things that people have. So I have some very distraught employees. And I understand where they're coming from. They like their job. They like working in Castle County. They choose to drive here to work. But they are in a position now where they're having to rethink that. I already have 7 vacancies. I can't hire people. And I'm looking at several more very soon because they are really struggling in how to pay their monthly expenses that they have set up. Thank you.
The next group, we have animal control, the tax department, building inspections, cats, and the cooperative extension. 911 and elections. If they're here, you want to move towards the front, and then we'll just let you go for that group. Dusty, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm Dustin Smith, I'm the Director of Animal Control Department. First, Commissioners, I would like to say thank you all for giving us the opportunity to hear our opinion, hear our voice, and just speak what we think about it. So my department, we're a small department, we're a department of two. The transition between the payroll, we didn't really have an issue with the old system, the once a month, that was fine. Really don't have an issue with the new system, doing the 2 weeks. We've had some technical issues, just like everyone else had. I mean, I think that's kind of to be expected. When you move into something new, it's going to take some time to get the bugs and stuff worked out. We understand that. But our main thing has kind of been like the same thing that we've heard, the short pay. And the July, the December thing, that's great. And, you know, we should still get the same wage at the end of the year. But like a lot of others have said, even though it may be a short amount, you know, overall at the end of the month, if it's a couple $100 short than what we had been used to receiving, over the last couple of years, inflation, everything we've been seeing, it makes a difference. You know, you're talking about child care, private school, mortgages, you know, just every little thing, every little bit adds up. That's our only thing. I don't really have a problem with it, with the 2 week deal, but the short pay does seem to cause some issues. So, you know, I think we're just looking to put hope into the salary study and hope that we can get something good to come out of that and be a benefit for everyone. That's really the whole thing I have. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Next, tax department, Mr. Bernard.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thomas Monarch Tax Department. The issues that my employees have came to me about was the shortness in pay per month. They understand that the extra check in July, December, I believe, will compensate for that. The biggest complaint is, and I think, that the system is not user-friendly. You know, it could be some systems that are, you know, more user-friendly. This one is, it's going to take time for everybody to get acclimated to it, but that's our biggest thing, is just not user-friendly. As far as the shortness of pay, I do understand, and talking with Brian, and I encourage the salary study to be implemented. If that's implemented, then it'll make up for the shortness every month for the employees. And it's just going to be the learning curve for the technology part. And that's, you know, the way I see it. But I appreciate y'all looking, you know, hearing us today. I appreciate y'all considering this salary study. I do hope that it gets approved. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Building inspections.
Yeah, I'm Ken Case from Building Inspections. I've actually worked at other places that have had both kinds of systems that we've used. I think it's whatever you get used to. I only have 2 employees, Greg and myself. And I haven't heard any complaints from those 2 as far as they understand the concept of 26 checks rather than 12. It's going to be a little bit different. And as far as learning to use it, When I first heard we were changing to this, I think I may have ruffled some feathers because I made the comment that it's not worry-free. Anything you do that's different, it's gonna, take some time to get used to it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is once people get used to it, they'll be okay with it. But, as far as my people, really haven't had many complaints. Thank you.
Just once again, try to stay close to the mic.
Next, we have Katz.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Williamson, and I'm with the Castle County Area Transportation System. Of course, one of our same complaints that you've heard from many of the other departments is the short of pay that we've seen in our checks each month. I know that we were made aware that it would be some slight change in our pay, but I think it ended up being more than some, had anticipated that it was going to be. And I think if it had been where, if each month, when we added those two checks together in the pay period, it would have still equaled out what we had previously been paid, you would have very few complaints at all right now with the new system. But like I said, I understand that the process behind this was that, it would be better for county employees instead of getting paid once a month. It would be nicer for us to get paid twice a month. But I don't think that we all realized it until it actually hit our accounts and what we did come up short each month. And like many of the others have said, of course, yes, in July, we will, catch back up, but that doesn't help from January to June. And I do hope that the pay study that is being prepared and presented, that you all will take a very good look at that, because if that were to be implemented, that could ease a lot of the tension that is currently, with the pay schedule that we have in place now. And there are some technical issues, which we expected that anytime you have a new software program. But I think once we all get more acclimated to that, those are things that can be worked out. It's just more of the complaints that I've heard. It's just where each month, we're not making the same as we did before. And we thank you for your time. Our whole department does. Thank you.
Travis Hosley, Cooperative Extension Department. I'm a little different, and I've got employees both on the state and the county system now. Just comparison between the two. It's very similar in how the employee clocks in and out and does that. They have to sit down at the computer every day and clock in and out. Just the concern I have is there's some user-friendly editing on the back end. It takes some time to do it, but getting used to that, we've worked those kinks out in our office when there's a mistake made and being able to go back and edit and make sure they're getting their accurate time put in. Mostly it's around lunch for getting to either clock out or clock back in over lunch, but we're getting through those and liking the new system. I feel now approving time off is a lot, for my county employees, is very similar to my state employees now. I know exactly how much time they have off when I'm saying and improving their time off. So I like to keep that accurate accrual going. Beforehand with the old system, it was iffy if it was correct or not on those monthly sheets. And sometimes it was, there's some error if the employee figured it wrong when they were putting the new sheets in. So between the two systems, we like it. Now, the one employee I have that does do the two pay periods, she understands 26 payments, and when we were discussing it, she just said she was going to rearrange how she schedules her payments throughout the month and make do with what she could. And she liked it because she was getting the two paychecks and could schedule things a little easier and more on time and didn't have to hold money back throughout the month to make sure things got paid. So, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kenneth Evans. I'm the 911 Director. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. Any change, when change can feel scary when it involves someone's paycheck. From my staff's point of view, their biggest concern has been the reduction in their net pay for a month. However, they seem to adapt and make it through. They have been very open-minded and attentive when changing over to this new software, which has allowed us to be very successful in our department. We are a department of 10 full-timers and 8 part-timers, so a total of 18 that I approve timesheets for. It has took my time from approving timesheets from about 3 hours down to making sure they're correct and accurate, down to about 30 minutes. So that would be an hour a total per month that I put into timesheets now. So that has been, that has truly helped me be more productive and accurate in a daily basis. I think we also need to give credit to the implementation team for this software for all the work that they did. The large amount of classroom time that they went through training and how well they work for each department is taken care of. So we have a lot of pros and we have a lot of cons that comes with this software. I think that there's certain fights we fight that we can win, and there's other fights that need fighting. And I think to overcome the difference in the reduction of monthly pay, our time would be very well taken to look towards a salary study, hopefully to fix the recruitment and retention problems we have with employees, especially in our public sector.
Thank you.
Our next group, we have elections, emergency services, farmer lake, finance, IT, and planning department. Recreation, you can start. You ready to recreation?
Ready to go? Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Matthew Hoagland. I'm with the Planning Department. As a department of one, you know, it comes with its benefits and its drawbacks sometimes. But I'll just say that in terms of implementing the new software, the new system, there's been minor technical issues, but relatively easy. Unfortunately, every once in a while, I just have to burden Ashley with my technical problems, and then she gets them fixed for me. With regards to the new pay schedule, that transition's been pretty smooth as well. And in fact, the third payment in July, I think, is going to land on my birthday. So I just want to thank you for the early birthday gift. But without a doubt, the biggest thing that I hear from other departments that have more employees is especially for folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, or even folks that may have like an automatic withdrawal for their mortgage. There was a disruption certainly in planning their bills and going through the monthly billing process and all that good stuff. To remedy that, I think our county manager has put together some very impressive numbers for you through the salary scale worth your consideration. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have about the planning department or the system or whatever it may be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Benson, Director of the IT Department. I would echo pretty much everything that I've heard here tonight so far. Currently a department of one, I can't speak on it from a supervisor position. I'm just managing myself right now. End user, I'm not really having any problems with it other than some technical issues, which any upgrade to a system, you're going to have some things going. I don't expect that's going to be anything that we can't overcome in a reasonable amount of time. And the shorter checks is a concern. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Barry Lynch, Emergency Services. As far as the pay, is that better? As far as the pay system, well, the new timekeeping software, our folks we've been clocking in, clocking out with the software system for the last 11 years. So it's not been an issue with them. My staff has also been paid hour for hour. We've been on a 28-day rotation for the last 11 years. So they haven't seen the reduction in pay that other departments have had. We've had 2 employees that see, Jason and myself, that are salaried employees. We've seen the reduction in pay. But as far as the rest of the department, I haven't seen any issues with them. We had some technical difficulties to start with EMS being on a 24-hour schedule. It caused some hiccups to the system. Jason has worked really close with Ashley, Mindy, to get those problems fixed. He went into it with a positive outlook, and now Jason's pretty fluent and does pretty well with the system. On a separate note, when considering the pay study, we are having, several years ago when EMS emergency services got the pay increase, we were above what the upper range of salaries in the state. Now everyone else has passed us, and I'm having a really hard time recruiting anybody right now. Matter of fact, I have 0 paramedic applications on file. Any questions?
Charlie King, former Lake Warden. Got a staff of myself. I can say now we did have some glitches, but the finance and Ashley's been great. One phone call away, they'll line straighten right up. Tell you where to go, but anyway, like I say, I don't have no problem with it. I've had it both ways in my career, every 2 weeks, in a month, and all that stuff, so I don't have any problems.
Sir.
Good evening. Rick Blackstock, I'm a Parks and Rec Director here in Council County. The biggest thing that we ran into with going to the automated system was change. The human element kicked in and it just blows some minds. We've done well in adjusting to it, and I have to give kudos to the finance folks and Ashley for tolerating some really insane phone calls on how to fix something that just, it's very simple to fix. In regards to the pay study, it all boils down to what the county can afford. Everybody needs to make more money. The amount of pay that was held back has been simple to explain, but difficult to explain because people want to know where their money is. They feel like they're making less money. They may be in the grand scheme of things, but it's just difficult to explain that even when it's broken down into a simple pattern as we had to hold this back to make sure you got paid on January the 8th. I thank you for all your diligent work. It's going to be easier before it gets worse. Thank you.
Okay, our last group will be the Health Department, Soil and Water, Solid Waste, Register of Deeds, the Sheriff's Office.
I'm the health director. I have 36 employees who embrace change very well. As we know, change is hard. Anytime you have to adapt, it's a big deal for people. The biggest complaint I've heard is the reduction in monthly pay, but I haven't heard a lot of complaints about that either. There are a couple of glitches for us, and that is, we've talked about before the fact that we get a Medicaid cost settlement every year.
And as part of that, we're required to do a time study, and that is not built into the system yet. And so my staff are still having to do a paper timesheet so that we can capture that information. The other thing is that the health department budget is made up of 21 different programs, and we have to allocate our time. And so that's another reason that we have to do paper timesheets. So right now, there's a little bit of a hardship and a waste of their time because they're having to duplicate efforts. But next fiscal year, I think we'll have that worked out, because we have to figure out how to get our budgets set up correctly in Munis, to be able to allocate our time to those programs. But otherwise, Ashley and Mindy and Jennifer have been amazing when it comes to us calling them about problems. They've been very responsive in helping us fix them. The technical glitches have not been a hardship on us. So overall, I think it's going to take a little while to adapt, but I think in the end, it's going to be a good thing. I will say we've had a couple of employees leave over time, and they left after their payroll was already deposited into their account, and we were not able always to get that money back because we were being paid current. So now with this system, that won't be an issue. Questions?
Thank you very much.
I'm with the soil and water. When we first started that thing, it was a little confusing. We had Jenny and Ashley on speed dial. They walked us right through it. So right now, we done back figured it out. We ain't having any troubles with that further. So we can live with it already. All I got.
Jen Metro Register of Deeds. As for me with the bi-weekly salary, I love it. My employees, they're getting used to it. As for the executive time, they're getting used to it. They don't care for it much. I can say one example, and it's a minor example, is we get our office prepared and ready. Whoever gets there first, before 8 o'clock, gets the office ready to accept customers, and sometimes we have customers before, right at 8 o'clock. And a little scenario is if they're there at 8 o'clock, sometimes that customer could take 5 minutes to handle, sometimes it takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes for just one customer. And they'll forget to clock in. But that can be taken care of with, me being my assistant or myself approving, going in and handling that, I've been told. So that's just minor, so they're getting used to it. As for the increase in salary, if you all pass it, I appreciate it, we appreciate it, Register of Deeds appreciates it. Thank you.
Afternoon. So, my staff, we don't seem to have a whole lot of problems with executive. My staff, we don't seem to have a lot of problems with executive time because we're able to do it on our phones. The biggest complaint.
It's to identify stuff. I'm trying to take notes and everything, so.
Payment department agent. I'll review both solid waste director.
AJ, solid waste.
The executive time system seems to be working okay for our department. We're able to clock in if we get called after hours from our phones, or I can fix it from the office. The biggest complaint I have from my staff is going to 26 paychecks versus 12. I have one employee that's been employed for 15 years. For 15 years, he got paid once a month. Now he gets paid twice a month, and then 2 months out of the year, he's gonna get paid 3 times, so he's not getting the same monthly income. And so that's a big variance on him. Hopefully the salary study will help, and he won't see that, whatever the salary study says. Have any questions?
No,
sir. How many employees do you have in the department now, full to part-time?
Full and part-time? I have 3 full-time, and I have 4 part-timers, but one's only like in an emergency situation at work.
Sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Darrell McLean. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Darrell McLean. I'm the Chief Deputy at the Caswell County Sheriff's Office. And I just want to pretty much reiterate what you've heard from other department heads. Our biggest hurdle was the reduction in pay. We've had several employees who are just used to, they live paycheck to paycheck. And they just weren't prepared or didn't have enough time to prepare for the reduction in their salary. But I would like to tell you this. I'd like to commend Jennifer, Mindy, and Ashley for being so Johnny on the spot when it comes to answering questions. And I've gotten to a point, I'm not an expert by no means, but you have a bona fide certified cell phone, flip phone user here, and I can navigate that executive time in my sleep. So I think it's good for the county. It's something that we need. We just need a little bit more time to adjust. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Why don't you speak on behalf of law enforcement retired?
Good evening, excuse me, good evening, gentlemen. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but after I sit here and I listen to all the other department heads speak, as far as employees.
Yes, sir.
You have to identify himself, who he
I'm sorry,
represents.
Frank Rose, retired employee with the Caswell County Sheriff's Office. I wasn't gonna speak tonight, but this hit the law enforcement retirees also. And when I say that, we don't do timesheets anymore. Once we retired, our supplement was set from the time we retired at age 62. When this happened, and I had nothing to do with the finance department, I know they have a job to do, but we also got grouped in this. And our paychecks went down every month. Now, we get that made up twice a year, but those months, if you've got a mortgage or you've got a commitment coming out of your bank account for a certain amount of money that went into your account every month, and all of a sudden things change that month when you get your paycheck, you got to come up with some difference in it. I heard it mentioned about the salary study and making up some difference. I was just, as far as the retirees, just keep us in thoughts with that because we also lost it. And we don't do a timesheet every month. Ours is set. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Commissioners, my name is Brian Miller, and I'm going to speak on behalf of the administration. As the head of the administrative department of the county, I'll reiterate everything these guys are saying. Everything you've heard every department head say today is true. But what I've heard them say repeatedly, time after time after time, is they don't get paid enough. Their employees don't get paid enough. And you know that. You as a board know that the surrounding counties make far more than what our employees do. So I've had discussions with many of our department heads, actually with all of our department heads, about this, with all of the department heads that would come to the meetings ask questions. And we have put together a salary study. And I do plan to go over that with you in short order. And if that salary study is approved, I think everybody will be fine. I don't think this, the misnomer about being short in a month, I don't think that will be an issue. So, as it relates to retirees, now, let's make a differentiation. One is a law enforcement officer receives a special separation allowance. That special separation allowance comes from the county, okay? Retirees, basic retirees, the county does not pay. That comes from the state retirement system. So when you hear retirees, we don't pay retirees, the state retirement system does. So nothing that we do is going to affect retirees from a salary studies perspective. Nothing that we do from a salary study perspective is going to help retired law enforcement officers with a special separation. So the board can do anything that it wants to. It can authorize additional funds for those. I think I'd have to check with the statute, but I think for those folks if they wanted to do that. But I'm happy to talk to you tonight and answer questions you may have about the salary study. I'm happy to answer questions you have about the payroll system. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm here. We can talk about it.
Why don't you bring us up to speed on the salary study?
So, yeah, the salary study. The MAPS group came back with a recommendation. The recommendation without benefits was a little over $1.8 million. And commissioners, we can't do that. We can't do that without a substantial tax increase from the board. I started looking at the salary study. I started looking at their methodology. And with a couple of minor changes, the MAPS group had a 1% escalator for every year of service, or actually every year since the employee had been hired. So I spoke to the folks at the MAPS group and said, hey, how does this look if we do this 1%, or we narrow this down and instead of using hire date, we use years in your current position? Because there were a lot of employees that started out in one department and then transferred to a totally different department with no similar responsibilities. And they said, yeah, that works. So I plugged in, I asked the department heads for their dates in current position. And some go back to 2007, so it's not that much different than hire dates. So we plugged in dates in current position. They had the 1% escalator in the salary study for every year you've been in that. So somebody that's been here 10 years received the new minimum wage for that classification, plus they received a 10% raise on top of it. So here again, we couldn't afford that, in my opinion, and I'm going to show you all the options that were made available. What I didn't think we could afford that. So we cut that down from 1% to 0.5%. Now I have the salary study from between 1.6 million and 1.75 million with benefits included. That's important because we're going to have to pay the benefits to the retirement system. We're going to have to pay the benefits, the health insurance, and so on and so forth. FICA, Medicare, Medicaid, we're going to have to pay those things. So having said that, I've looked at how those payments are scheduled. I've looked at our debt set-off, or our debt service, and how our debt service falls off. I've looked at the amount of ARPA funds I've looked at the new refinancing that we've completed for the detention center. I've looked at, sell a home health and the $250,000 per year in savings that we see from that. I've looked at, a couple other ways that we can make this salary study work. And I'm prepared to show you how you can make this salary study work without a tax increase. So I look forward to doing that with the board at the first meeting in March. I will ask the board, if the board ends up passing the salary study, I'm going to ask the board to make that effective March 5th. Not March 4th, March 5th, because that's the start of this new bi-weekly payroll cycle. That way we're not having to deal with split weeks running two different rates in a system and lending rates, so on and so forth. You know, I understand a lot of people are not happy because the reduction in monthly pay or how it seems like and it doesn't seem like it, there truthfully is a reduction in the amount they receive monthly. And I understand that people aren't happy about that. And quite frankly, I wish in 2000 we could have had this same discussion before, because I would have advocated never to start this type of system. Because I don't, the monthly payroll, because I don't think it abides by the Fair Labor Standards Act. That's number one. But number two, I can't always make people happy. But what we can do is pay them fairly and pay them correctly. And that's what I'm advocating for today, is that we pay our employees fairly and we pay them correctly. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Well, I had a question here. Mr. County Manager, I know what you're saying, what you did. I did some research too. But however, over 75% of these people were happy that I heard them not. They had some problems in their pocket. Now, my thing is, asking you know, I know we're not sure when we're a salary study. We're not sure they're going back. None of us, you know, take 4 votes past that, what I'm trying to say. So my thing is to get the people happy and keep the morale up. Why not go back to the 50%, not change your payroll, but every 2 weeks pay them half what they would make. We know that Calvin County don't pay the top pay. We know this. I mean, even when you came, you didn't get top pay. You know, so what's wrong with going back to they on the 2 payroll, but just give the people the same amount of money they was making and the 2 payroll, and then when we get the salary study passed, then put your other thing in. I mean, can you do this? That's my thought.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Logistically speaking, I don't think we can do that. I think what we do, if we do that, is we get back into the same scenario that we were in before, where we're paying people current and paying them for time they have not worked. You heard our health director say, they paid people before, and then that Friday, that employee quits. That employee's already been paid for the next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That employee quit payday Friday, and they weren't able to recoup those funds from where they paid that employee. There's a whole myriad of reasons why paying people current in that scenario is not a best practice. And I don't know, Commissioner Jeffrey, I don't know that I can even tell you the intricacies of what it would take to go back and do that.
It would be a nightmare.
Okay, so our finance director, who's also heavily involved in payroll and charting accounts and stuff that make up our payroll system, said it would be a nightmare if we were to try to go back and do that at this point. I'm not saying we can't do something different. We planned the conversion for January 1st, not because it was the beginning of the year. That's not the reason we chose January 1st. We chose January 1st because January 1st had the least amount of impact for our employees as it relates to how would it impact their money, how it would impact the reduction in pay, how long that they would have to go without a paycheck. That January 1st was the perfect time to implement the new pay system. So to wait for another time that we could implement a new system without a large degree of impact on employees and the timeliness of their pay, I mean, we would have to research that. I know we waited a long time to be able to do this simply to reach the right time.
So my thing is, we went through this, and I'm not sure that it was communicated. I know you told the department head what was going to, but I still say, I think employees, you should have told employees too.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think that's my one biggest regret, that if we had to do it over again, we would have had one large employee meeting. I think that would have probably been the best way to do this. But I'll reiterate and say that you, the Board of Commissioners, expect me to do a job. I, in turn, expect the department heads to do a job, right? I rely on them to keep their people informed. We told the department heads about this in July. In November, a letter was sent out. We told them multiple times in July, actually. In November, a letter was sent out to the department heads that said, hey, give this to all your employees. And the employees were even giving an example, and I think it was a $30,000 a year, and Commissioner Jeffries, I think I gave you that letter that was supposed to go out to all employees. But he gave an example of an employee that made $30,000 a year, how that would look bi-weekly, how that would look from a monthly standpoint, and the reduction in that pay. So they had an example to go from. We had constant contact with the departments, but Commissioner Jeffries, you're right. If I had to do it over again, I would have done it. I would have one large employee meeting to where we could have informed all of the employees at the same time. They heard it from the same source and didn't have to rely on different departments to send different messages. You're right.
You know, I didn't get the right understanding myself, because I heard it said and I wrote it, but I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it clear like to write it. Sorry about that.
Mr. Miller, the bi-weekly pay is based on 80 hours of work, or the work that occurred in that 2-week period?
Yeah, it's based on, so employees are being paid by the minute, and they're being paid for the amount of time they worked in any accrued time that they may use to make up to 80 hours.
In that period of time?
In
a 2-week?
In a 2-week period.
How much of a nightmare, and it sounds like Ashley can fix any nightmare that we could possibly create, what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, the finance department, and I know you've heard a lot of employees tonight give very high praise to Ashley, Mindy, and Jennifer. But I want to tell you too, Melissa has been a tremendous warrior in this fight, and Rose Farmer and Kristen Hamlet and Tanya Fuller, they have picked up the slack in every area, every time that they could. They have done a tremendous job as well. So I could not be more proud of our finance department and implementation team.
And I'm very appreciative of that. Yeah. My question is, is it not possible to do twice a month payment? Once on the 15th, however many minutes have been worked from the 1st to the 15th, and all the accruals, and then however many minutes have been worked from the 15th to the end of the month, whatever that is. How big a nightmare is that?
Well, it would change the schedules that we build out first and foremost. And I'm talking about things I don't know here, so I'm going to let Victor talk.
Good evening. Jennifer Hammond, Finance Director. Very valid question. We have to consider more than just the dates of pay. The whole system has been configured according to a bi-weekly schedule. And if you switch from bi-weekly to twice a month, it also means going back in and reconfiguring everything in the system for all of the benefits, such as insurance payments, health insurance, dental, Aflac. All of that would have to be reconfigured, and we would have to reach out and contact every one of these vendors to restructure and reschedule everything. It's doable, but it would be difficult and extremely time consuming.
Well, what I'm struggling with here is salary study is telling us we are underpaying the employees, period. So the remedy for what we might be able to afford, I'm hearing, is about the fix that it takes to balance off this 2-week deal. So it sounds to me as though we're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. We're fixing one problem, but not the other, with the same solution.
Well, the holistic problem is our employees aren't being paid.
That's the point I'm making.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying is, maybe it's a nightmare, maybe it's a problem, but I don't advocate paying a 14% increase. There's no way we can afford it. No way this board's gonna vote. So we can't solve both problems unless we deal with this issue of employees coming up short in the month for their other payments that are due on a monthly basis. What we need to do is get the payroll in sync with payments that most people encounter that are due on a monthly basis.
So if we pay current, if we pay the way you're suggesting, then employees are still not going to receive the same amount every month. It's just that it doesn't work.
They will if they're salaried employees.
No, but they're not. They're hourly employees.
But it's the same as if they were getting before. Yes, it has to be. It has to be.
If you're paying every employee 80 hours, that's correct.
If you're paying an employee for the minutes they work from the 1st to the 15th, and then the minutes they work from the 16th to the end of the month.
No, because not every month has the same number of working days. So some days, some months will have 20 working days. Some will have 22, some have 23. So it always varies about how many working days are
facing that now. Hourly employees are facing that now. It's no different.
I agree. I agree. So if they're being paid for the time they work, you're exactly right.
I know.
And that's what we're doing. We're doing what you're suggesting, currently.
Except we're creating a problem for people that have got monthly. They're coming up a week short per month. It's there.
It's 7%.
It's coming.
They're coming up 7% shorter. And then in some months, they're gonna come up 33% over because of the bi-weekly.
I'm just saying, you pay them twice a month, you solve 99% of these issues. I guarantee you. Do the math. The issue of a short monthly pay, not the issue of insufficient pay. For the job. That's all I'm saying.
Are there any other questions?
Got two.
Okay.
Several folks mentioned problems with user interface. Is more training on the way to alleviate any concerns that they have in reference to using the users?
Yes. So we're working in conjunction with the library to develop that training now. We had hoped to roll it out this past Friday, the 18th, but then the board said, hey, we will meet, and we planned on meeting the 18th, and that got canceled. So that training got delayed again, but yes, more training is on the way.
The second one would be, have all issues involving any shortages other than the discrepancy between going from one payroll system to another been taken care of in reference to anybody short of hours that were legitimately short or any missed paychecks?
It is in the process of being corrected. That is something.
How many employees do we have that fit that bill now?
An estimate would be the majority,
The majority of our employees?
as far as accruals go.
No. Were you asking about the accruals or the amount of money?
The amount of money where I had.
Do we owe anybody any money?
No.
So all that's been taken care
Yes,
of?
sir. That's all straight.
Are there any other questions? Commissioners, you have 10 minutes before you start your next meeting,
We need a motion to adjourn.
unless you have more questions.
So you're gonna go over the salary study first of next month, first meeting. Regular session.
Yes. And I may, if you want me to talk more about it, we can add it to the agenda to this meeting, to this upcoming meeting, and I can tell you whatever you need to know about the salary. Tonight, you have a rule as a board that you're not going to approve more than $10,000 in off-budget spending in any one given session or in the session in which it's first introduced. So I would like to talk about it a little bit tonight and introduce it in our upcoming meeting. And that way, in the first meeting in March, you can consider it and vote on it one way or the other.
So you're prepared to discuss it tonight in detail?
I am prepared to discuss it in every detail that I can.
Okay, then let's do that.
So you'll have to, when we go into the next meeting, you'll have to read the agenda.
Yep.
But we need a motion to adjourn this.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Can I get a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to adjourn this special meeting. Roll call voting, Mr. Dickerson. Aye. Mr. Jeffries. Aye. Mr. Owen. Aye. Mr. Ostrander. Aye. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, you're muted.
Aye.
And McVeigh, aye. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regular scheduled commissioners meeting tonight. If you will, if you'll join me for a moment of silent prayer, then we'll do the pledge of allegiance, public comments, and recognition.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments, Laura Pinnico.
Good evening, County Commissioners and County Manager. I created a list of items that I just was taking my time to think about of what we could possibly improve in the county. An area of improvement is that we can add meeting reminders to our government webpage so that in case somebody like me who has a job that's very time consuming, we can receive an alert so that we are more informed of what's going on in our county, so that if we spot any areas that we can help with, we are able to provide quicker feedback so that we can help our taxpayers save some money. And then, when I wrote this, I was thinking about the internet issue and opportunities for broadband. I noticed that on January 28th, y'all had already talked about this. So my questions are, can we push for more of publications on the government website? I saw it on Facebook, but I was just lucky enough to be following y'all's pages. So if we can have more public statements. And then on the January 28th meeting, I also noticed that y'all had noticed about the Rockingham County's digital inclusion plan, which they have publicized. They were talking about how they're gonna close any gaps of areas where people might not have broadband. They said that 60% of their county is rural and only 40% is actually urban. And I wanted to make you aware that on the governor's page, they have issued another $350 million from the FCC for rural broadband. And I think it's a great opportunity to apply for those funds as well. Because I don't see any federal commission retrieving those funds once they're issued. They're not going to ask for them back. And that's also a part of our $31 trillion deficit as a country. But we shouldn't be apologetic for somebody else's mismanagement. So if we have the opportunity to apply for those funds, we should go for it. The window to apply for the greater grant, which is on the governor's webpage, is open until April 4th. So I would like to offer my assistance, if possible, for the grant writing. If anybody needs help so that we can meet that deadline, it's a great opportunity to apply for it. And I would also like to ask, how much of the current funds for broadband have we used? Can we have more transparency in that area? I noticed that in December, a spectrum representative came to the county. Can we have more of those public relations announcements? On page 2, I have other areas of improvement. I hope everybody has the opportunity to check out the Coast Square here at the square. It's an opportunity for people who are working from home, who might have to stay in from home. It has great internet access. It's a very comfortable environment to work in. If any of you have the opportunity to just come in for a few minutes and sit with us, you'll feel the atmosphere and you have an opportunity to have your lunch there. It's very comfortable. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Black.
My name is Elaine Claggett, 108 J Lane, Providence, North Carolina. First, when I was 18, I worked a minimum wage job, paid every 2 weeks, and lived within a budget. But as you know, my public record request was initiated last December and has not been answered. That District Liaison Robin Braswell of the State and Local Government Finance Division recommended that I contact North Carolina DOJ Public Protection Section for assistance regarding North Carolina public records. According to the North Carolina Attorney General, the Public Records Act imposes obligation on all local governments officials to allow the public to obtain copies of public records as promptly as possible upon request. Caswell County's public record policy, adopted October 21st, 2019, states public record orders shall be completed within a reasonable period of time. Questions I asked December 30th, 2021. When will the June 30th, 2021 annual budget audit be available and what is the cost? Does Ms. Vaughn continue to receive the equivalent of full-time pay while working on with the current finance director and the assistant finance director? Her salary in 2018 was $58,000. Additionally, a fourth CPA consultant, Mr. Isley, is to be paid $210 an hour. How many days do you anticipate retaining his services in the initial 6 months? Easy questions. Additionally, over a month ago, on January 20th, I added, how much does the Caswell government pay for total legal and attorney fees in 2020-21? The UNC government listing for county attorneys in North Carolina in 2018 and 19 reported that Caswell County Attorney Mr. Farrell was paid an annual retainer of nearly $50,000 plus professional fees, which totaled $163,439. When compared to 10 other counties that have 20 to 30,000 population, this is high. At least 4 of these counties have their own full-time county attorney, while other counties' wages varied from $48,000 in Cherokee County up to $119,000 in Hartford. Additionally, DSS compensation of $71,235, that was 2018, was paid to a second local attorney, and a third attorney, George Daniels, receives money working with the tax department. Attorney salaries have been renegotiated and undoubtedly increased significantly since 2018. There may be additional legal fees for issues such as BY high school bonds, property sales, spending of relief funds, and redrawing of election districts. Your management team is failing. Maybe the county attorney can advise the manager on the legal terms reasonable time or as promptly as possible. Typically, audits are due to the state October 31st with a 30-day extension if needed. I would think a reconciled budget and audit of the last fiscal year would be optimal, if not essential, for your upcoming budget discussions. I ask questions easily accessible, uncomplicated answers.
Excuse me, your time is up.
These questions are not going away, so perhaps today in the comment portion, maybe you could ask them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shuping, you had signed up on public comment, but you're on our agenda. I don't guess you meant to sign up on public comment. All right. Looks like, is it a Thompson?
Benton K. Thompson.
My name is Benton K. Covington Thompson, 284 Blanche Road, Blanche, North Carolina. Please refer to the email in your packet for the complete letter that I sent to you in your packet. When I began my recent national, state, and county research on that history of slavery, I was not prepared for the kick in the gut of the discovery of that sordid past dating back to 1526. By 1767, 41,000 slaves were in the province of North Carolina. You can read the stats yourself, but Caswell slaves numbered in 1860 at 9,355 and whites at 6,570. My privileged white self cannot feel pride, and none of us can ever repay for the harms done by slavery and the Confederate War. Post-Civil War, we passed numerous controlling hate-filled Jim Crow laws, including rules such as forbidding public restrooms used by blacks. The Confederate soldier in the center of our square was erected in 1921, 57 years after the end of the war, and has remained there for 101 years. It is time to do the right thing and relocate it and look to the present and the future, not the past. My maternal great-grandfather served in the Confederacy as a 14-year-old, and this cannot be changed. But moving the monument can be changed to promote forgiveness and healing. A cooperative restoration that involves the commissioners, the chamber, Piedmont Community College, the Arts Council, and the public could give us a chance to show we privileged whites care and do want to do what is right. Recommendations: 1, move monuments from the square to the recommended area in front of the left yard of the historic courthouse. Number 2, Piedmont Community College design a plan and initiate the re-landscaping square. Number 3, seek current former residents, if possible, to design and create a unique monument representing peace and harmony. Number 4, Castle Arts Council aid in seeking designer, establish guidelines, seeking selections with commissioners' final monument approval. Number 5, Castle Chamber and public spearhead methods to secure monies needed to cover the cost. Number 6, rightly co-down celebration on completion of multi-agency public project with goals for healing and for unity. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Sarah Broadwell. Okay. That concludes the public comments. We're going to move on to the agenda. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
Commissioner, I would like to add an item for discussion on the agenda, some solid waste issues.
What would you like to add?
Solid waste issues.
Solid waste issues, I'll put that at number 9. Huh?
There's already a number 9?
Yeah, but we're going to put this number 9 under discussion.
Okay.
And then number 10, is there any more amendments to the agenda?
Well, we're going to hear the salary study.
Well, you need to make an amendment to the agenda.
I would like to do that.
All right, do it.
I would like to amend the agenda to include the discussion, presentation on the salary study by Mr. Miller.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, we also need to amend the agenda for the closed session. This needs to be added in CGS 143-318, period 11, parentheses A, parentheses 6, and that is to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective officer or employee.
Is there any more additions to the agenda? If not, we will vote on it. Our roll call voting. Commissioner Dickinson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall. Aye. Commissioner Jeffers. Aye. Commissioner Owen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ostriker. Aye. Commissioner Carter.
Aye.
And McVeigh. Aye. Motion carries. Agenda is approved. We need approval of the consent agenda. Under consent agenda A, February 11th, 2022, regular meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call voting. Mr. Dixon.
Aye.
Mr. Howell. Mr. Jeffries. Aye. Mr. Owen.
Aye.
Mr. Ostriker. Aye. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
McVeigh. Aye. Motion carries. We're moving on to presentations now. Mr. Shuping with BioHealth.
Well, good evening. You got one Brian, but not the shoeping. He's back there. He's going to let me rattle on here for a minute. I'm Brian Ingram, and I'm the CEO at Via Health, and we are your local management entity, managed care organization. And what that means in simple terms is we have the responsibility for paying for services and managing the care of individuals that need assistance with mental illness, substance use, or intellectual developmental disabilities. And we're all tied up in Medicaid transformation like a lot of other organizations. I know you have a lot on your agenda, so just have a short PowerPoint to go through, and most important is that I answer any questions you might have. So let's dive right into that. There was a consolidation that occurred, and it was effective January 1st. And at some point towards the end of last summer, you made a decision to stay with VIA. It is the organization that Cardinal consolidated with. And hopefully these are the characteristics you saw in us that would give confidence in our ability to work with you. And it's really pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You know, we believe in having folks on the ground and engaged in day-to-day activities here. And you know, we've made pretty good on that, as far as I can tell. When it came to all the work to accommodate the new counties, and there are 9 new counties, what we offer each of those counties was the same kind of experience that we had in other situations like this, where new counties came under our management. And that was really all about continuity of care for members and ease of operation for providers. And again, these same characteristics have held true for that, with really an absolute minimum of disruptions. Next slide. Yeah, about that consolidation, it really set off a chain reaction all across North Carolina, where counties made decisions about which local management entity, managed care organization they wanted to have a relationship with. And when the dust settled, this is what the map looks like. Our colors are in that dark blue, and we have a total of 31 counties now that are part of our catchment area. And you can see the other associated organizations like us and the corresponding counties there. And we'll speak a little more about this later. Next slide. Yeah, the department has certain performance standards that are really important for us to be reporting on. And this isn't about bragging, and it's not about saying things about Cardinal, but it's just about what you can expect and what our track record has been. So for example, there are only 2 LME MCOs in the state that end up with a perfect report card. And we'll show you that a little bit later, and we're one of them. So a lot of the things that are very important for the department that holds our contract, just like you have contracts with contractors, those things that are most important, we do very well on. That's the simple way I can put it. And that's important because that means that your citizens are going to get the best possible care and the best possible management of their needs. The follow-up after discharge. Probably the most vulnerable time for someone is when they get out of the hospital. I mean, if you've ever had an inpatient stay for a medical or any other reason, you know that they spend a lot of time on discharge planning and making sure that you're going to be safe and well taken care of. We do the same thing, that follow-up after discharge. The transitions to community living. Individuals who have been placed in residential programs that don't need to be there, that can be out and living in the community. We've excelled with that. And things as simple as being sure you have a primary care physician, which many of our members, we find out, do not. So they have inadequate health care. Simple things like that we make sure get done. Next slide. Non-Medicaid members served. Now, why is this important? If you care about efficiency or effectiveness, this is the center of the target right here. What this means is that for the limited amount of funding that we receive for individuals who do not have Medicaid, and this is the most difficult population for us to manage because the small amount of money, the large amount of services, we do better than everyone else except for Trillium. And historically, we've led with this. So that means for every dollar we get on a per capita basis, more people receive care for that dollar. And for example, you see the contrast with Cardinal that did not very well with that. So one of the things that you should be able to expect is that under our management, more services will have access to care. Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's all right.
The previous slide, I had just spoken to somebody, like 10 days ago, that said they were having trouble finding, and this was not after a hospital visit or anything, they were having trouble finding a personal care physician. How do you do that in an area where that's hard to do?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question, Commissioner. And there isn't a single answer. At this time, we are not responsible for physical health needs. We will become responsible in December as part of a Medicaid transformation where we'll be a tailored plan. So we will have the responsibility then for the management of individuals' physical health needs. Right now, that limited performance indicator that I mentioned was just related to a specific population and providers that we were working with directly because of the need there. So that would not be the sort of thing that we would be involved in a day-to-day basis right now, but beginning in December, we will be. And we'll have to have a network of physicians, just like we do now, just like their insurance company does, so that someone could call our call center and find access to care that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this is the report card, and green is good. So you see Cardinal's performance there, and you see Via's performance there. And again, the point of this is just what kind of improvements you should be able to expect based on our track record, okay? So this is apples to apples across the board. Next slide. Keep going. The going live of a county like Caswell is a lot of work, and we try to make it as seamless as possible. And we've done a good job with that. That's been very, very important to us. So we've put a lot of resources into that. And there are things that if you didn't know it, you'd never know it was happening, right? That's our goal, so that nobody understands all the things happening behind the scenes. All the members who are Cardinal members become our members. There's really very little at all that changes for them. The same providers that they went to when Cardinal was responsible are the same members they go to when we're responsible. All of those contracts were assigned to us. So from an ease of care, continuity of care for the member and for the provider, again, just as simple as possible. CFAC regions established, CFAC board representations. Let me talk about that a little bit later when we talk about governance. Next slide. Yeah, more of the same here. 95% of the Cardinal providers became our providers. There were some that chose not to for whatever reason. And in those limited number of cases, we were able to get any people that they were involved with moved to another provider. All kinds of training for providers. The command center that we set up is just what it sounds like. Staffed with subject matter experts so that primarily providers, okay? Members, there's different entry for them to have questions and solutions provided. But the command center is essentially for providers to navigate any sort of problems that they were having. For members, we have a call center that operates 24/7, 365, toll-free number. And we saw a big blip after January 1st when the new 9 counties went live, but we were staffed for that and prepared for that so that we were able to manage that higher demand. Governance, okay. When the general statute last had a change in the law regarding governance for our organizations, I don't think anyone anticipated organizations like ours becoming as large as they have, and others as well. So to really make sure that we were getting adequate input from counties all the way up through and including our governing board, we asked the secretary for what's called an alternative board structure. And we were granted that. Essentially what that means is that we broke our catchment area, and we'll have a slide about this in a moment, into 4 separate regions. And each county would appoint one county commissioner or a county manager or someone associated with the county directly to that regional board. And we're pleased to have Commissioner Jeffries and Aisha Gwynn, who I had an opportunity to meet earlier, as your representatives to the regional board. Now, you take those 4 regional boards, and they met in January and worked very diligently to appoint 2 members to our governing board, okay? And there's a hard copy in your folder of what our current board of directors looks like now, okay? We're having our first new board of directors. I call it VIA 2.0. We're having a retreat Thursday and Friday with many new members that are representatives from these different counties and different parts of the state. And this really goes to the same challenge we had with the Consumer and Family Advisory Councils, which are very important to us. They are representative of our members and their families. They followed the same path where they organized themselves into 4 regions and also made 4 appointments from their boards to our board of directors. Next slide. So here's the regional map. You folks are in red and you're region 4. Next slide. I think Brian Shuping, we'll finally get him up here. He's probably best prepared to talk with you about the most up-to-date status on a lot of the services and enhancements we've been working on. In fact, we started many of those even before January 1st when the consolidation was effective. Ryan?
I've been dying to get up here. I signed up for everything. Sorry, Chairman. Just trying to sign in the meeting and be present. I just want to talk a little bit about these. I wanted to introduce Kara. Kara, if you want to stand up and introduce yourself, you can come on. Kara is your regional director. Kara will also be pestering Carla and Brian to get on a quarterly commissioners meeting to give an update. We really want to engage with counties, want to give you an update. Kara will be able to bring county-specific data for Caswell County, what your citizens are, what kind of services they're seeking, who's engaging, what providers we have, those types of things. So you should be looking for that very soon. When we came into the county, we met with Diane Moorfield and her staff over at DSS. And I'm sure as a board, you've heard lots of challenges with DSS, getting services for kids and placements and all those things. So one of the things we did immediately was increase kind of their options for services. So I think that was something that was helpful to the staff. We also committed to having a staff embedded at DSS. I believe her name is Shantae Bowers, is our bias staff that's embedded at Caswell DSS. We also have Youth Villages, a child-specific provider that's doing on-site assessments there. We had a meeting on the 17th with Caswell and heard lots of good comments about how that's taking a burden off of families, having to travel out for assessments. They can go right to DSS, get their assessment with our provider that's embedded there. So we're really excited about those things. I also wanted to mention, one of the commitments we made, Brian and myself and our medical director came and met with Diane the first time we came to the county and made a real commitment to building more services in the county. We do realize a lot of your citizens go outside of the county to get potentially services and care they need. So we're not ready to talk about our comprehensive care center yet, but we are courting providers and hope in about a month to 2 months that we'll have a plan to have more robust services in the county. So just wanted to give those updates. Didn't want to take up too much time. I want to make sure you met Kara. She'll be giving you updates here in the future.
Next slide. Similar to the performance standards, we are always happy to provide the level of care someone needs. But one of the things we're especially conscientious about is allowing people to live and work in the community. See someone participating virtually. Intermediate care facilities, again, really reflective of our desire to let people live in the community. You find, that we use those institutions much less than others across the state. Again, very focused on recovery and independence. And we're always happy to be a trailblazer and, let others benefit from the way we approach things. And care coordination has been one of those over the years that, we've done very well, and others have worked with us to learn how we do it so that they can do the same. Next slide. And that's it. Always available to be in touch. Either Brian Shuping, myself, or Kara, and all the contact numbers are in there. So, any questions?
Anybody else got any questions? I guess not.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sir, we appreciate it very much. Moving on to discussion items, Board of Elections update, Mr. Bill. And I got a question before you get started. Didn't we ask them folks to come before us a couple of meetings ago?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And what's the problem? We ain't seen them, because I know it's been at least a couple of meetings, and they send these remarks and stuff in and don't come before the board.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that there are several times that they meet at the same time you do. Maybe not at the same time, but the same days. And they don't wish to attend 2 meetings on those days.
What?
They did not wish to attend 2 separate meetings on those days. If you'll see in your agenda packet, the elections director has provided you with some information. Ms. Smith has also provided you with emails.
We asked to see them.
I understand.
And I'm not getting on to you. It's many a meeting that all these commissioners go to when we're asked to go to meetings. And we've asked that Board of Elections to come before us a couple of months ago. And I intend to see them up here, or we're gonna do something.
Yes, sir, we'll relay the message, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know if there's any need in you going over all this stuff or not. I've read it from top to bottom, and I am thoroughly ticked because they won't come before this board.
I think the only thing I'd like to highlight in the packet, there's 2 things. Is one, there were give or take about $20,000 worth of CARES Act funding that was not spent. And number 2, they have requested what questions you may have for them in writing, correct? So if the board pleases, we're happy to pass those questions along, or we're happy to pass those questions along, but we're just as happy to say, hey, Board of Elections, the Board of Commissioners requires your at our next meeting.
I don't think we're going to prepare any questions for them to send to them. They need to come before this board. And
and then we'll ask our question. And I think that that needs to be conveyed to them, that they need to come before this board.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else on this board of elections update? If not, we're gonna move on to Mr. Mr. Dickerson's solid waste.
Thank you, gentlemen. What I want to talk about tonight is revamping the solid waste ordinance.
Could you speak into the mic a little bit better? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Hear me now.
Better.
Thank you. I want to talk about revamping the solid waste ordinance. This was originally discussed many months ago. Actually, it was a meeting that took place with the district attorney's office, sheriff's department, solid waste, county manager, and myself. Seems that there is a problem with the ordinance as it is currently worded, that we cannot hold people accountable for illegally dumping trash in our compactor sites. And not only that, but there is no damage recovery provision strong enough to get the actual damages. So a lot of times they've been dumping construction equipment, especially the one in Samora. If they damage that hydraulic component in that compactor, and you try to go after them civilly, it creates all kinds of issues. There was a lot of discussion about how to make sure the county didn't get stuck with that tab. In addition to that, the penalties in the ordinance are too low for people coming into this county, dumping trash that we have to pay to dispose of. There, like I said, many problems in Virginia line. If y'all haven't seen the latest photograph floating around with a pickup truck slammed full of garbage being dumped in the Pelham area up there, just feel free to go on Facebook, take a look, it's all around. We've been talking about this way too long. Our solid waste fees basically have doubled, but we have additional burdens being placed on the taxpayers by people bringing garbage in that they illegally dump, and we're not stopping it, and that adds to the compounded problems of not only the cost of hauling it away, but the damage that it does. And just a few ways to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like $1,600, one of those hydraulic units that it went out. What was it? It wasn't cheap. You remember the figures? I'm not gonna put you on the spot, okay? Not cheap. When are we gonna do something about this? When are we gonna have the county attorney fix the wording in the ordinance, bring it in here? We discuss it and we put an end to this abuse of the County taxpayers.
So the ordinance is complete. We have, I have provided a copy of that to Mr. Fuquay. He's currently reviewing the ordinance. So internally, we're ready for the meeting. I think, have you had an opportunity to review it, AJ? I've been through it one time. Okay, so we have an ordinance. We're reviewing it. I think we're ready for the meeting. I think we're ready for the meeting.
Well, I would like to see that happen as soon as possible. It'll be put on the agenda where we can address it.
Yes, sir. And if I remember correctly, the full board wants to meet with the sheriff, the district attorney, so on and so forth, correct?
Whatever the next step is, all
for it. Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Dickerson, on that?
That's it.
All right, we're gonna move on to the salary study. Mr. Ostrich, Miller.
So, Commissioners, I gave you a brief overview in our special meeting previously. What I can tell you is this salary study touches every employee and the Board of Commissioners. It increases the Board of Commissioners pay by the equivalent of 10%. It increases the average increase for a county employee is 19%, with a 15% overall from year to year. The increase would cost without Benefits, $1,454,740 per year. With benefits, and these are rough numbers. The numbers I'm going to give you right now are rough. $1,454,740. With benefits, $1,745,688. There's still a couple things I need to work through there. The increase, I can show the board how to pay for it, not just 1 year, but 4 or 5 years. Pay for it for each of the 5 years until our debt service drops off to such a level that it's sustainable by itself without using ARPA funding after that. We would use a large amount of ARPA funds throughout the process to offset the years until the jail actually falls off. I think the jail falls off after year 5 of the implementation of the salary study. So by using debt service, lapse salaries, detention center refinancing, health department, home health, the sell home health savings, a little bit of money from the health department fund balance to fund health department operating increases. Some budget reductions, some ARPA money. I think I have a plan to show you where you can pay for it without a tax increase. What's specific? I told you before, the methodology used by the salary study consultant was bring everybody up to the minimum. After that, 1 year of service for every year that they, since they were hired. I changed that from every year you've been in your position and to 0.5% for every year that you've been in that position, to get it down to a more manageable number that the board, I think, can feel good about passing. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Currently, 20% of our employee base makes under $30,000. 20%. If you approve the manager's recommendation, 2% will make under $30,000. And it'll be my recommendation to the board that you make a minimum salary of $30,000. Doing that, making that minimum salary threshold of $30,000 will cost an additional $11,000 if the recommendation is approved. If not approved, the cost to move all county employees to $30,000 or the equivalent thereof would be $139,000. Out of the $1.4 million, only $251,236 are longevity-related increases. The rest is just bringing our employees up to the minimum due to the 0.5%. So I know the board has in the past given some employees increases and not given other employees increases. The board has elected to give dollar increases rather than percentage increases. I would advise against both of those, simply because when you do that, what you do is you create salary compaction. So you're making less of a gap between a social worker 1 and a social worker 2, if those are 2 of the classes that's affected. And what that does is it provides less incentive. you know, if you're only going to make $300 more a month to move from a social worker 1 to a social worker 2, many times employees won't see the benefit in doing the extra work required to move to a social worker 2. And that's what's referred to as salary compaction. So that's the reason I would advise the board not to do either one of those things. One other thing that I wanted to clear up, and reverting back to our previous conversation about the payroll system, one of the things that I really wanted to clear up is I think our department heads, for the most part, did a fantastic job going out and telling their employee base what they needed to do, and working with them and bringing them up to speed on executive time. But I do think there were some communication errors in some departments. So I don't want to lump everybody into, you know, department heads didn't go out and do, they did. The majority of our department heads did exactly as they were asked to do. And I think they did a great job doing it. And I think you heard some of the results of that in the comments that were made tonight. Our employees, they knew it was coming. Our employees had prepared for it, you know, things like that. But it still hurts. My recommendation in the other piece of my recommendation is there were a number of employees in the consultant salary study that were scheduled to get 0. They were scheduled to get 0 increase, period. Because the consultants thought that they were already at what level they needed to be. Unfortunately, I don't think that meets what I think you guys believe is important. What I've heard you say multiple times is we believe in our sheriff's office. We want to support our sheriff's office. We want to support our emergency services folks. Emergency services were among the largest departments to receive 0. And what that did was create situations where you were neither providing funding for emergency services departments to attract or retain employees. I think you've heard from our sheriff's department or sheriff's office. I think you've heard from our 911 department, and I think you heard from our emergency services department that their departments are hurting. When it comes to recruitment and retention, they need some help. So the other thing that I did is I went in and built in a base of 7%. 7% ties into the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. 7% is the lowest increase any county employee would receive. And that lets them, at a very minimum, be able to buy the same loaf of bread, the same gallon of milk, and the same gallon of gas they did last year at this time. At a minimum, that's what they're able to do. So, so every county employee would receive a minimum of 7% increase. And there are some fairly large increases. Some employees could stand to see a 45% increase. 20, 28, 30% increases are not uncommon within the salary study. But that's based on the 0.5% and the longevity and moving those employees up to their minimum wage for that position. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. There were a total of 3 recommendations from 3 options from the consultant. At the next meeting, I plan to share all 3 of those options with the board. I'll explain why the first 2 options I don't believe that the county can afford. The third option, the county can afford it, but it does nothing to help the sheriff's office, EMS, or 911 with recruitment and retention. The other thing it does not do is keep county employees up with the inflation rate or the consumer price index, which has increased 7% over the last year. So I'm happy to answer your questions you have.
Mr. Brian, question I have, the sheriff's department, the patrol officers, would that be compatible to other counties?
Well, what I can tell you is I met with the sheriff several times. And I believe Orange County is starting some of their officers at 51,000. I don't believe that we're going to be able to compete with them. So, but I believe what they did in the salary study to reach that minimum pay rate range is they took the average 7 or 8 counties, and then based on the duties and responsibilities of those officers, they rated them anywhere from 70 to 100%. And most county employees landed in that 90, 95 to 100% range. There were some individuals that just because of the size of the county, the number of residents we have in the county, because of the number of employees that report to us, they were rated lower than their counterparts in other counties. So whereas a worker at DSS may be rated at 98 or 100%, my rating because our county is smaller, we have fewer departments, my rating would have been somewhere more along the 70 percentile rather than the 100 percentile. So, and you see that in several upper management leadership positions throughout, simply because of what's required or what's perceived to be required. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what the consultant brought for us, so that's what we work.
Most counties have do you have any plan with EMS and sheriff's department, if they hired, will they have to stay here a minimum of 2 years? Because what you run into, the other counties paying more money, and Caswell County's becoming a training ground. So I think, we need to have in place at least an officer or EMS would stay here 2 years.
Yeah, Caswell, we do, Commissioner Carter, you're exactly right. We do spend a lot of money on training employees and on equipment. The bulletproof vests that are fitted for each individual officer. If that officer leaves, we just kind of lose that bulletproof vest. So I understand what you're saying. I don't know that legally we can make a requirement like that because North Carolina is a right to work state. I know there's in other counties are offering incentives with clawback provisions attached to them. And if the board wants us to look at things like that, we definitely can look at things like that. But I think that's separate and apart from the classification of pay grade system.
Kind of touched on a little bit about what I wanted to ask, but more in relationship, not Orange County, Guilford, other counties with much higher cost of living, but the starting salaries for the sheriff's department here versus like Rockingham, Pennsylvania, Person County. Is there any kind of breakdown of that information in there to make us competitive with the ones we're actually competing against?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Orange, Guilford, Granville, Alamance, Durham, those are the ones we're competing against. Because our officers leave here and go there. So it would be unfair not to include those in the study, but they're weighted to some degree. And we also have Rockingham in person. And I do have that information, and I'm happy to share it with you. For instance,
So with this salary study, that'll bring all the county employees up to par for a while?
Yes, it does.
My next question would be, how are we gonna pay for this?
So if you give me just a minute, Mr. Carter, I'm trying to find Commissioner Dickerson's sheriff's office thing, and then I can go back to and talk about how we pay for it a little bit more.
Mr. Miller, you don't need to dig through all that now. If you can just get that to me later. I just want to look at that. I want the immediate surrounding counties. We could hypothetically pull in Granville, you can pull in Guilford, but the real competition's coming from the closest geographically located counties to where we're at. I'd like to see what they're paying.
Yeah, and absolutely, I'll get that information to you.
Also, I would like to see, you mentioned earlier that certain employees were not scheduled to get an increase yet. You went back and looked at it and deemed that you wanted a 7% across the board. I'd like to know what the original study said.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm going to give you all three options that the consultant recommended. And you'll be able to see all those numbers on all three options, plus the manager's recommendation. I plan on giving you all that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But if the board will remember, before we started the salary study, I sent out an email to the board and said, hey, commissioners, we're looking at using Alamance County, Durham County, Chatham County, Granville County, Guilford County, Orange County, Person County, Rockingham County. Those are the counties we're planning on using. If anybody has any issues with that or would like to see some of those counties taken off, or if you want to see some different counties added on, let me know. And I didn't receive any feedback, so those are the ones we used. And those, I'm sorry, those counties were derived from a work session between the MAPS groups and the department heads. And the question the MAPS groups asked are, where are you losing employees? Where are your employees going? And that's the reason that those counties were chosen.
Well, I'll just echo what Mr. Carter said a minute ago. If you want to start matching apples and oranges, and you're talking about a county with a much higher cost of living, you better be looking at some real serious revenue bringing into this county in the future. We need economic development, we need a diversified tax base, and not all this falling on their county taxpayers on property taxes. We've got to think in a big frame going forward. We don't only have this, we got the increase for the high school coming up. A lot of money's got to come up with things in the future, and we got to be smart about how we do this.
I agree, and that's why I put together a plan to show you how you can do it, but without raising taxes.
So, yes. First thing would be, can we get that plan sooner than waiting till the Thursday before, just the salary plan?
Yes.
I'd like to have it a little bit longer than just a couple of days.
I am still working on the manager's recommendation slightly. So I'll be happy to give you the three options that the consultant gave, and get you the manager's recommendation as soon as I can.
that'd be fine. Two other things, and this is just for us to consider and remember. There are a lot of variables that I heard in this plan with keeping us from having a tax increase to cover. So I just want us to make sure we look at those variables, because one of those is debt reduction. Well, if something happens and we have to go into large debt again, that changes, it changes it altogether. That means there's going to probably have to be a tax increase. But I just like for us to make sure we look at those variables and just get a feel for what variables could cause us the most problem if something were to happen. The other thing we need to remember is we do have that casino coming along. And what that's going to do is going to put further strain on our emergency medical services and our law enforcement services. There's no doubt with traffic increase, people increase, we know what that brings. And so we just need to be aware of that, because I am, can almost be assured that we'll probably be asked to increase the number of patrol members from the sheriff's department. And rightly so. I think we need to look at that and see if there's a way to do it, because it is going to put a strain on our services. And what I don't want to happen is that we put that strain on and then our county residents as well have to suffer because of that. So just a couple of things for us to keep in mind as we go forward with this salary step. Thank you.
The casino's been delayed a year.
Mr. Ostraker.
Mr. Miller, I kind of like to echo what Commissioner Owens said, that I'm kind of a visual kind of guy and graphics, and I'd like to see what the costs, what the plan's going to look like. Not necessarily per person, obviously, but in some breakouts, like you said, 30,000, 40,000, and how that impacts it. How these increases are assembled, the components are in each one. And then also where the money comes from, because you described it's coming from multiple sources.
That's correct.
And the duration of these sources as well. So I'd like to say a timeline on when the money runs out, and then on one source it kicks in on another source. So really need to see, a graphical presentation of this. I would have bars and stuff like that, where we can actually understand the components of it.
And I have all that ready.
Because it's a very complicated proposal that you're talking about, and that you described earlier.
It's really not complicated. I understand with multiple funding sources how it can seem complicated, but I think once you look at it, you'll see that the same sources were used for multiple years, and it's really fairly simple. I think the biggest, the most complicated thing is visualizing how the debt service falls off. And then in year 5, how the debt service drops off $800,000. And then with the other things being in place, it becomes self-sustainable without the use of ARP funding.
And that's what I'd like to see how that plays out.
I have that ready.
And before the next meeting, so we can digest it.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any more questions? If not, we're going to move on. Action items. Health Department. Do what, Mr. Carter?
Yeah, what are we gonna do on this? What are we gonna do on the pay plan, salary study?
Commissioner Carter, I'll have that on the next agenda for you to consider.
What did he say?
He wanted to know when it was going to be on again. I think's what he wanted to know.
Yeah, well, I want to know, was we gonna go ahead and approve it or not approve it?
We're not, it's got to come back up again, we'll have to talk about it and look at the different plans and stuff. It'll be discussed again. Moving on. Health Department Commercial Space Rental Agreement, Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, we have, our county attorney has reviewed the lease. We have with us tonight our health director, Jennifer Eastwood. I'll ask Jennifer to go over the basic mechanics of the lease and maybe some recommendations from our county attorney.
So we're looking at the lease, 1,700 square feet of space. The landlord would be building 2 additional office spaces for us. That's included in the lease agreement. It's $1,850 a month or $22,200 per year. It's a 3-year lease. He is responsible for sewer, water, and maintenance of the space. We would be responsible for utilities. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, questions? Of course.
Go ahead.
I looked at this thing and it looks like we would be responsible for a fair bit of what goes on in that shopping center.
So,
And the common areas and all that other kind of stuff.
Commissioner Stryker, you're exactly right. And I think our county attorney has identified a lot of that stuff. If we could let him give his recommendation and his legal recommendation, I think it'll solve a lot of those issues that you might have.
Yeah, I mean, the way this is written, I mean, this is a one-way street.
I think you're exactly right.
Straight out of our bank account. And, you know, I'd love to, man, if this guy's looking for a partner and he gets people to sign these things, I'd love to partner up with him. That's a hell of a deal for him.
Commissioners, the form has a number of deficiencies. And I believe what we got was the landlord's standard, you know, shopping center lease form. That's not a very good fit for this particular deal. I have, you know, proposed a number of revisions to the form itself. It runs on for some 30 pages. You know, I think we really need something more in the 10-page range to get this relatively straightforward lease done. So I understand exactly what Commissioner Ostreicher was just mentioning, and there are a number of other terms as well that we need to work on. So, you know, if you're so inclined to move forward at the basic monthly lease rate at the term provided, I'm happy to work on a, you know, much pared down form that I believe accomplishes the goals of getting us in this space on the, you know, basic terms that the parties have agreed to, without having this, you know, onerous 30-page shopping center lease that's, you know, probably much more suited for a more complex deal than this one needs to be.
Well, like I said, I mean, this leaves us responsible for virtually all of his costs. You get right down to it. And
yeah.
I don't think that's what we have in mind here. I'm hoping.
Right. This is structured as a triple net lease, and I believe this is really just a straight monthly lease rental and not a triple net as contemplated in the form. But again, my guess is we just got their standard shopping center lease form and without a lot of customization for the particular situation here.
Well, I expect this thing to come back a heck of a lot smaller and a better definition of what we would actually wind up paying, because right now we pay for everything.
No, I've marked it up, and if we decide to use this form at all, another option is going with a standard, you know, North Carolina Realtor form commercial lease agreement. I've talked with the manager about switching the form because this one is so complex. But if we go with the form, which I've already marked up, it's about half of the terms survive.
Well, I would be in favor scrapping this thing completely and working on a different methods. Because who knows what else is lurking in this? I mean, I read it, and every time I reread it, I found something else I didn't like.
Well, there is a lot there, but I've read it as well, and I'm familiar. It does follow a standard complex shopping center lease form that I've reviewed, the basic provisions for a number of times previously. So, but there is a lot there. We don't need all of it, and I'm with you. I think simplifying is the way to go, and some landlords are just wedded to their forms, and if that's the case, we'll whittle it down. However, if he's willing to go with a basic, standard realtor form for this particular lease, great. We'll start there, and I think it will get to the finish line much quicker. But if you're comfortable with the basic term, I'm happy to continue to finalize the form to get the arrangement to reflect the understanding that the health director has presented to you. So if you wanted to, you could approve the lease with the lease rate subject to final county attorney approval, and I'll work through it with the landlord. That's one approach. Another approach, of course, you always have the option of just bringing the final back and taking a look at it one more time. I'm not clear on any time constraints associated with this one. Jennifer will have to speak to that.
Are there any time?
I'm sure if he has someone who's ready to rent it, he'll rent it to someone else, but we'll just find another space.
Yeah, I personally would rather wait until we have the finished document in front of me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I hate to lose the space, but I want to make sure we know what we're getting, and we know what we're getting in for.
I think one thing with him was that he has a construction crew that is kind of needs something to do right now. And so if the understanding was that we were gonna go ahead with the lease, he was gonna go ahead and have them start the construction process.
Right, and I don't have any problem as far as the price and that sort of thing, but I agree with Commissioner Oestreicher. I think there's just so much in there that looks like it comes into our bucket, and I'm not necessarily sure that's right to begin with, but I think we need to protect our interests as much as we can to be.
Yeah, I think you're finding this at this price and you've got the funds to cover it, that's fine. But, and if we can get a lease that limits us to this kind of liability, that's fine. But to be responsible for paving the damn parking lot and putting up a marquee and all that other kind of stuff.
I think we're all on the same. I think we're all on the same page with that, and I think that's what the county attorney was reviewing it for, and I think he found all of those places where we would hesitate. So I think we're all on the same page.
But I agree with Commissioner Owen. I'd like to see finished goods before we make a determination on this. And we have to find a new place. We have to find a new place. I don't mind you working hard a little bit.
All right,
Just kidding.
Is everybody in favor of postponing this until the county attorney comes back? Do we need a consensus on that?
If there's no action to be taken, there's no action to be taken.
What do you say?
No action taken is no action taken.
No action taken. We're going to move on. County manager's update.
Is there anything that the board would like to know about?
I think we've covered it pretty much. Okay. Commissioner comments, Mr. Dixon? Mr. Howell? No. Mr. Jefferson? Mr. Oestreicher?
Yes, sir.
Figured.
Wouldn't be a meeting without me talking. Two updates. I think both are very positive, fun. And one of our public comments kind of sort of addressed this. A really good news, just learned that Spectrum Charter has put in, I guess, the wiring or the capability in the Stony Creek area per the RDOF project that they've undertaken for the county. And I can't comment on how many people have hooked up to it, but it looks like it's there waiting to be connected to. And so they're starting to do what they said they were going to do. And they're doing it pretty quickly. So I think that's extremely encouraging. And they're starting right where they said they were going to start. And they're going to be working their way up into the county. As I put out on social media, let's, if you see a Spectrum Charter truck in your neighborhood, you know, put the shotgun down and put your hand out and welcome them, because they're there to do good service for you. I think they told us they were going to be doing hang tags on doorknobs for people to sign up.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So, good news. I expect we'll have more of it to talk about. The second part is in our work session, I talked about updating the comprehensive plan for the county and the fact that we needed to get a steering committee started on that. And what I'm proposing for, I don't know whether I need a consensus or not, but just agreement with the board, that we start with kind of an executive recruiting board of Scott Oakley, who, whether he knows it or not, is kind of sort of signed up to be chairman. And then also recruit Tony Foster, myself, and Matthew Hoagland. And what we would do would be to build a steering committee of about 12 people with members that would represent the agribusiness area, education, real estate area, the city of Yanceyville, the city of Milton, some tourism people, and community members. But I think one of the comments I heard was that we need a two pizza size committee that there's about 12 people that you can feed with 2 pizzas. So we don't want a 50-person committee to try to get this done. So unless someone has some objections, that's how I propose we start on the steering committee for the comprehensive plan to get that thing rolling.
I have no objection.
Has the planning board had any input into this?
That's where Scott Oakley and Tony Foster and myself.
I mean, as far as y'all discussing this in the meetings, what has been there?
The planning board has had an opportunity at least once a year for the last 13 years, 9 years to comment on this, and they haven't yet.
Any more questions or anything else? All right, we're gonna move on to announcements and upcoming events. March 7th.
Wait a minute, I got a couple things.
All right, say it, Mr. Carter.
I asked Brian a couple of weeks ago, Brian, have you got anybody looking at the sound system? Because I tell you, I noticed, and I've had several people talk to me about this, it's a lot of echo in that courtroom there. Where I'm sitting over at Mr. Ostrike, it's hard for me to hear Mr. Dixon or Mr. Jeffers say anything. Mr. Jeffers said it's hard for him to hear. And Brian, I was wondering if you got in contact with anybody looking to come in and look at the sound system.
We've had several discussions about the sound in the courtroom. Several discussions that relate to the lack of sound barriers within the courtroom. The prevailing thought was way back when the courthouse had curtains up on every window. There were no problems hearing anything when the curtains broke. So we're going to be going through a series of testing to see how that affects sound in the courtroom. So yes, we're discussing it, yes, we're talking about it, but we've not gotten through it yet.
Well, I think we really need to do something. And one problem with solve the hearing is for everybody to have boom mics. If you had boom mics, then you'd be able to hear what everybody was saying. About 2 years ago, we put that sound system in, and it got a little better because I came down one afternoon and Paul and I made adjustments on each one of those mics. And I don't know if they've got out of sequence or what. I may have to do it again, but I came down one afternoon and spent about a couple hours and got them all adjusted. But really, to solve the problem of hearing, I think it would be good if everybody had a boom mic. That way they would hear everything that's going on. I don't know how much they would cost. If you could look in to see how much they would cost, if everybody would be interested in wearing one.
You mean like the lapel? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, we can absolutely do that.
Anything else? Announcements and upcoming events, March the 7th, 2022, Board of Commissioners meeting at 9 a.m. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to go into closed session to prevent the disclosure of information as privileged or confidential, which privilege is hereby acknowledged in CGS 143-318, period 11, parentheses A, parentheses 1, and to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee in CGS 143-318, period 11, parentheses A, parentheses 6.
We have a second. Second. We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call voting. Mr. Dickerson. Aye. Mr. Howell. Mr. Jeffries. Mr. Owen. Aye. Mr. Ostraker. Aye. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
And McVeigh. Aye. Motion carried. We will go into closed session now. We're back in open session at this time. Is there any questions or anything anybody needs at this point? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor by roll call voting. Mr. Dickerson. Aye. Mr. Hall. Aye. Mr. Jeffries. Aye. Mr. Owen. Aye. Mr. Ostraker. Aye. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
McVeigh. Aye. Motion carries. We're now adjourned.